Happiness Solved with Sandee. Today, I'm speaking with Yolanda Latimer. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Happiness Solved. Oh, gosh. The interview that I have today that I'll be sharing with you is with a good friend of mine, Yolanda Latimer. She is a single mother of 3 beautiful kids, and her story is just incredible, and it's so inspiring. So her eldest son, kind of like a son to me, he's my son's best friend, and he is just such a joy and a delight, and he stays here with us whenever, Londa needs some help or whatever. And I saw him recently, and my son wanted to have some kids over, and I have this rule during COVID that I'm like, nope, nobody's coming in the house. All these college kids are super spreaders. And so he was like, well, can we hang out in the garage? And I was like, sure. So I went out there to take a heater because it was a little cold. And I saw Isaiah, and he's like, I want to give you a hug. And I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, well, I just tested negative. I'm like, yeah, and yet you're standing here with all these kids. So I let him give me a hug. And then I looked and I was like, you dyed your hair blonde. I'm like, you're trying to look like me. And he just has the cutest smile, and he's got these dimples that are so cute. But anyway, it was great to see him, albeit for a very short, hot minute. So I'm talking with Londa today, and her youngest daughter ended up being a preemie. And the journey that she went through was absolutely just, I can't even imagine having to go through that. I only have one child. Thank God, he was my miracle baby. But what Yolanda had to go through was just, when you listen to this story, it's just, I can't believe having to go through that. So we talked for such a long time that we're actually going to split this interview up into 2 parts. So this is the first part today, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited for this podcast.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just really excited about this, and I'm having a lot of fun, and just thank you for joining me. And I really want to share your story because you've had a really interesting 2020. Probably it wasn't the 2020 you imagined in more ways than one for many of us, but your story of what you went through. But first, let's talk about Savannah and what that journey has been like with her.
So with Savannah, of course, I found out I was pregnant with her back in right before New Year's Eve in 2016, which was a little bit of a downer since I had already had plans for New Year's Eve. And the beginning of the pregnancy was so-so. I say that because I was nauseous all the time. I never did actually throw up, but I was really, really nauseous, and it was just kind of hard for me. And you know how much I eat to balance, not overeating, and to have eaten enough. So that was a hard thing. So the pregnancy was pretty non-eventful until my 20-week scan, which is the anatomy scan, and they measure your to make sure that everything's in order, and everything was in order. But the next week was an evening, right after work, and Isaiah and I who's my eldest son, very well.
Yes.
We're just watching some old videos from Facebook. And I started feeling a little bit uncomfortable. So I was like, I'm just going to go lay down and take just rest, because I thought I had maybe done too much that day. So I went to sleep. The cramping subsided. But when I went to use the restroom, I saw some blood. So that was alarming. Not too alarming, because I have had early bleeding before in pregnancy. So I wasn't too scared. But I thought that, something I obviously needed to, any bleeding, you need to, get to a healthcare professional.
Absolutely.
So I left a note for Isaiah, and I got in a car, drove myself, because I was again, I wasn't really alarmed. And I got into the triage, and I was explaining to them my day and everything, and they didn't seem alarmed either. They were like, okay, well, we just think your baby's playing with you. We're going to put you on the belly monitor. And they were saying how strong her heartbeat was to be a 21 weeker, because I was a little 21 weeks and 2 days. So they said, well, before we let you go, we're just going to check you really quick to see, we're going to check your cervix and see what's going on there. And when the doctor checked my cervix, I was 4 centimeters dilated. And immediately she said, you're going to lose the baby. The delivery is imminent and we're not going to be doing anything. We're not going to be able to do anything to save her. So,
oh my gosh.
At that point, I was a little bit hysterical. I was crying, just sobbing. It was in the middle of the night and I might have been like 4 or 5 in the morning.
And you're by yourself?
So I was by myself, yeah. And I was just like, a lot of things flashed before my eyes. Like, I had already found out that she was a girl. So I'd already obviously was very attached to that. I have 2 boys. So I really, really wanted a girl. So I was dealing with that and just, not knowing, that's never been told to me before. So I just didn't know how to process it. I was really, really just out of sorts. And so what they told me was that they were going to take me up to labor and delivery because, again, delivery was going to be imminent and I needed to be there where I could deliver. So when they took me upstairs, the nurse, she talked to me a little bit and then the doctor came in and he said his piece, saying the same thing that, he checked me as well and was like, yeah, you're too far dilated at this early stage and you're too early for us to intervene. We don't even deem this pregnancy viable past before 22 weeks, which was hard for me to hear because I was already attached to her and I could feel her moving and all of that. So
of course, I mean, how could you even process it?
Right. I didn't see her as non-viable, right? So I understand that was a medical term and all of that, but it was hard and really, really harsh to hear as a mom. And it wasn't like I'm a first time mom. So I know what that means, So the nurse came back in and she said, well, Miss Latimer, we think that the course of action would be to administer Pitocin. And Pitocin is a drug, those of you who don't know, that jumpstarts labor. It gets labor going. And I said, well, can I decline that? Because you're telling me that you want me to jumpstart labor. She's not coming out on her own. So why would I jumpstart that? So she says, yes, ma'am, you can decline it. So I did. And they said that they would allow me to stay in the bed and stay pregnant as long as I didn't get an infection. They explained to me that if I had gotten an infection because my cervix was open, that I was obviously open to infection and that if that were to happen, then they would have to take her anyway. So I just had to be, fully understood that would be the course of action if that were to take place. So a lot of what was going through my head, even when I had declined that, directive from the doctor, was that I refused to give up on her. Like I had decided that I wasn't if she wasn't in duress and she wasn't ready to come out, which I felt that was what they were, wanting me to accept, that like it's over and it's done and I might as well just accept it and let them just go ahead and go through with it because, the pregnancy is over with and I just refused to accept that. So I did a lot of praying and the next morning they told me if I made it through the night that they were going to send me over to Fairfax Hospital. So I made it through that night and the nurse that I had the night before, she kissed me on my forehead. She said she normally doesn't kiss her patients, but she kissed me on my forehead and she said, I wish you the best and I want to see that baby. You bring the baby back to me when you can. I want to see her. So the EMTs that were taking me over to Fairfax, that was like a 45-minute drive, right? And they were like, please don't have this baby in here. They were like, because I guess they get like these wings that they're called wings that they ever deliver a baby like in the ambulance. And they were like, we don't want to get her wings today. So just hold on for us. I'm like, okay. They're like, you're laughing, but we're serious. So we got there. They got me into triage over at Loudoun. And I just had to sit and wait for the doctor to come in and give me his assessment because each doctor they get to do their own assessment. So the doctor that came in, he had like a protege, like someone that was shadowing him. And, they were, of course, my legs were open and they were like, it just was weird because it was, if you were on the outside looking in, like my legs are open because they're looking to see, and you should see their faces were all turned up and they were talking in their language, wasn't English. And so they were conferring amongst themselves. And then when he got done, he's like, because the plan was to maybe put a cerclage in, which is like a stitch to close up my cervix. But after they did their assessment, they said, no, you're not a good candidate for that. So you're going to end up having this baby. And there's nothing we can do about it. And, of course, I lost it again. And they said it's a very, very slim chance that she will make it. And if she does, she's going to be severely disabled.
Oh my God.
Is what the doctor told me. And he leaned over me and he's like, did you understand what I said? She's going to be severely disabled. So I kind of took that as and obviously this was my interpretation, being emotional and all of that. But I took it as that he was like, well, you have a decision. You can just go ahead and not have this and go ahead and have the baby and not maybe take her through that, her and or myself through anything that I may not have been ready for. And I could just have said, okay, well, I'm going to take your advice, your medical advice, and go ahead and deliver with the help of medicine. But again, I declined. So they took me upstairs to their labor and delivery. And I was scared. Didn't know what was going to happen. And I had already made the decision that I wasn't going to give up on her. So I was going to endure or go through whatever I had to go through to get her here safely. So, well, as much as I could. And the nurse that came in, she started talking to me. You know how when they first come in, they tell you, who they are and all of that. And I looked at her name tag, and because let me just back up for a second. I had asked God for a sign. I said, just give me a sign that everything's going to be okay, because I just need something to hold on to. I had my faith, but I still wanted to see something tangible so that I could say, okay, I'm not, this isn't just me in my own head, that this is going to be okay. So when the nurse started talking to me, I was looking at her name tag, and her name was Comfort.
Aww.
And I just was like, there's my sign. Everything's going to be fine. So she's like, we have one other person we can ask for a favor. We're going to keep you pregnant as long as we can. So again, they were prepared for Savannah to come that night as well. So they wouldn't let me eat. And that was a problem, obviously. Since I hadn't eaten since breakfast at Loudon, and I had been there all day, and it was 9:00 at night. And I'm like, I have to eat. She's not coming and I need to eat. So they had to wait to get the order signed off from my doctor to give me something to eat. And I think the nurse gave me some chicken. It was the best chicken nuggets ever, because I felt like I'm like, oh my gosh, I couldn't even chew fast enough to, it was terrible. I felt like a whole savage. So, but I made it through the next day. And when the nurses, they change over in the morning. And when the nurses came in and they did their change off, is explaining what my condition was, what my situation was. And then they were explaining to me that I was going to be on strict bed rest. I was not going to be allowed to get up. So I would do everything from that bed. I wasn't going to be able to go take a shower, anything. They were going to wash me up. I was going to use the restroom via bedpan. And I was like, oh, okay. Great.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because I'm definitely not used to that. So I got up my first time to use the bedpan, and the nurse, I felt a little bit of pressure, but it wasn't anything that I felt alarmed. And the nurse she was in the bathroom, and she saw me, and she saw, I guess Savannah's head came down and she could see it. And she's like,
oh my God,
lay back down. She just started yelling. And I was like, okay. So I laid back down. Everything started to be like a blur, because it was like they called for the other nurses. They called for the chaplain. They turned the bed on. When you have the baby, they have to turn the bed on over there with the light. And then the chaplain came, and she started praying for me. And then the two nurses that had taken over and they were shadowing, there was one that was shadowing the main nurse. And they started telling me that I was going to deliver, and that she will come out and she'll seem like she's breathing on her own, but she won't be. And that she'll be allowed to be placed on my chest, and they'll allow me my time until she passes. They said it could be 2 hours, it could be 5 hours, however long it takes for her to pass, they would leave me with her by myself.
How on earth could you even hear something like that? I can't even imagine.
So I heard it and I didn't. It was kind of like I heard them talking and I was very aware. Like I heard every word that they said. But I also think it was more of an adrenaline rush for them because I think they may have never seen anything like that before. So they were like regurgitating words that they maybe not should have said to me. But because it was like everything started happening so quickly, they kind of it was like, okay, this is the textbook thing that you say to a patient when this is happening. So I'm just going to regurgitate it. Because again, like I said, someone was shadowing her. So
right.
I think it was more of it was because there was no bedside manner with that. She just was kind of like running things down to me as to what was going to take place and asking me, her name for her death certificate and all of that. It was like, and that's something you probably wouldn't want to do at that time as a nurse. No. Like you probably wouldn't want to do that. But I think and I gave her grace because I think and she was young. And so I think that she just was like, I'm just going to say everything I was taught to say in this situation.
Right. Right. That's what it sounds like.
That's how I felt. So I didn't hold it against her.
She was doing the best she could under the circumstances.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So after she got done, I asked to be placed back on the belly monitor so that I could record her heartbeat on my phone. And they did that. And they said, well, we're not going to check you. We're going to wait for your doctor to check you, but she's in a meeting. And I'm like, she's in a meet? Like, you're kidding me, right? And they're like, no, she's in a meeting. So, you're going to have to wait.
No, she's supposed to be here with me because I'm her patient.
I'm like, you can't go get her out to me? Like, what? Are you people killing me? So I'm like, okay. And so it was 45 minutes. I had to wait 45 minutes, the longest 45 minutes I felt in life. And they gave her some sterile gloves to put on. There's some gloves I had never seen before. And she checked me, my cervix, and she's like, I feel nothing. I don't even feel your membranes. I feel nothing. And she was like, she just went back up, Savannah. And she said, you must have the strongest membranes I've ever. She's like, I don't even feel any thinness or anything. Your cervix is just open.
Savannah's like, I changed my mind. I'm a girl. I have that power. I have that right. I'm just going to change my mind.
I think she must have, because she really was trying to go. I mean, she was like, okay, I'm coming, just kidding. I'm coming, just kidding, So she did a few fake outs that gave us a lot of scares, especially her mama. But so
you can, when she's a teenager, you can
I know
hold this
that's what everybody
her.
was telling me. Like you have so much to say to her if she ever goes sideways.
Do you know what I went through?
I know. They're like, she does have no idea. She has absolutely no room for error at all. Period. But I know.
Poor thing.
I was like, dang, and my mom, I put my mom through a tough labor too. I think she might have been in labor 3. They let her be in labor too long before they did the C-section. And I ended up having to be in the NICU myself for like a week, I think, my mom said. But of course that was back in the day, and they did her C-section up and down, straight down instead of the bikini cut.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how they did hers. Yeah, it's pretty. But anywho, they did as I asked. I recorded her heartbeat, and the doctor came in, she checked, and everything was fine. So they're like, we're going to try to keep you pregnant as long as we can. The neonatologist came in and gave me a consult, and he said, your goal is to make it until she's 22 weeks and 6 days. And at the time, I was 22 weeks and 1 day, because when I went in, I was 21 and 5. So 21 and 2, and they were or 22 and 1. And they said that you need to make it another week, basically. So I'm like, oh my God, I need to, I felt like just a week. And that's when you realize that every day actually counted. When I hear,
right.
Women who are having a pretty normal pregnancy, and they're like, oh, I need her out. I'm way overdue. You know what I mean? And going through that situation with Savannah, I would have loved to have been overdue. Right. But it's the situation that it plays out, because I had normal pregnancies prior to her. And so Yeah.
Well, and when you have a normal pregnancy,
Right.
you don't know what you don't know. And you just,
So I had to learn.
it is what
I
it
had to
is.
learn. I mean, I had to go through the whole thing of, people my friends that we were pregnant together and kind of had the same like due date, feeling kind of jealous that they were like still in their pregnancy where I'm fighting to keep my baby. And none of them know that, right? Because I didn't share it. So that was hard. But
well, the whole pregnancy thing in general is really hard because I mean, I remember trying for 8 years to get pregnant, and it's the hardest thing to go through when you're having infertility and you're watching all of your friends around you and they're having babies and you're like, you wanted that
yes.
so badly and it just
Yep.
wasn't happening. So, and the same is true for what you were going through. Yeah. It's hard. It's very hard. But you know what? We can't fault them because you want to be happy for them that they're
healthy
blessed
pregnancy.
with having a
Yes.
healthy pregnancy,
So
right?
it's definitely like it's a double-edged sword because it's like, okay, I do want to support and I want to, congratulate. I love seeing people's maternity shoots and stuff like that. But I had already had planned what mine was going to be like, and I had went on Pinterest and got ideas and inspiration because this was going to be like a huge thing. She's my first and only girl, and it was going to be such a big thing, and none of that got to happen. So.
Yeah, and all I was going to add to that was it doesn't take away from the pain that you're experiencing because for you that was so real and intense and devastating what you had to go through, and it was real for you.
Pretty real.
Yeah,
pretty real. So they gave me the consult, told me that I needed to make it to 22 weeks and 6 days. And once I made it to 22 and 6, that they would give me this magnesium drip, which meant that I couldn't eat for 36 hours, which was another, like, I couldn't lose. I'm like, 36.
They only
gave me ice chips. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Just ice chips is all they gave me. So yeah, I made it to 22 and 6, and then they gave me the magnesium drip, and they also gave me the shot, the betamethasone shot, which is for the lungs. But she came like right after that, so it didn't get too much it didn't get in my system long enough to kind of really do anything for her. But the little bit that it did get, I guess it helped. I don't know. So the night though that she came, it was they were doing like their regular where they come in every 20 minutes and check her heart rate and everything. And they were noticing that she was in distress and her heart rate was dipping. And so they're like, okay, this is probably going to be it. We're going to deliver. And I'm like, okay, great. I can just push. And they're like, no, she's breech and we're going to have to do an emergency C-section. And I'm like, you have to be kidding me that I have to be cut for a 1-pound baby. They're like, yes.
After all that you've been through, you still had to have a C-section.
But I never been cut before, and man, and it was like quick, like they were like, we got to do this now. So again, no one was there, and they're wheeling me off to the operating room, which I've never been in an operating room before, ever. And so I was a little bit, scared about that. And it was very cold in there and everything was so stark and sterile, and it's the things that you see on TV, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. But the one thing that I did find some humor in is that like once they got the spinal tap in me and they laid me down and strapped my arms and stuff. And then this guy came in to shave me and I was like, it sounded like a lawnmower. And he was just like, he's just like into it all by himself. He's like, like he didn't even look at me or anything. And I was like, do you want to know my name or anything? Like he didn't even look my direction. And he was just like going into, I'm like, I didn't know how much I had there, but I mean, you were really like making sure there's nothing there. So that was the funny part to me where I was strapped down, I couldn't move and I was starting to feel numb, but that was the funniest part that I can close my eyes and I can see him still like doing that because I could just hear the motor on the razor.
Well, I think I've shared with you this before, but when my son was born, my doctor He only delivered at Fairfax Hospital, where you delivered Savannah. And I was able to get a private birthing room, and I was so excited because I'm a very modest person. And so I'm sitting there, my legs are up in the stirrups, I'm ready to deliver Brandon, and I look over and there's a door there facing me, no curtain, and I'm like, anybody could walk up and look in and see me like delivering my baby. I'm like, what about this situation is private? And thank God my parents were on their way. They showed up 10 minutes after he was born. I would have been mortified if my father walked in the room and just saw that. Like I could never, I don't know if I could have looked at him again after. I couldn't even breastfeed my child in front of my father. Like that's how modest I am.
That's embarrassing.
So, anyway.
I guess, yeah, it is embarrassing.
I'm modest. I know there's a lot of younger women and I respect you, more
yeah,
than
they're
me,
like,
but that just wasn't me. So,
just out loud. I remember I was a teenager and my mother had gotten me the book, What's Happening to My Body, book for girls. And at that time I was an avid book reader. So I was like, my nose was always in a book. I was always in my room reading. And my dad would often like come and knock on the door and come and like ask me what I was doing. Right. So he came in the day and it happened to be, I was reading that and he was like, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm reading What's Happening to My Body, a book for girls. And he just like stood there for a second. He's like, okay, well, dinner's going to be ready soon.
Okay.
He was like, dinner's going to be ready soon. And at first I wasn't going to tell him, but I was like, he could see it in my hand. But that was that one awkward like thing that I felt with him was like, he's like, okay, well, dinner's going to be ready soon. And then he like walked out and shut the door back. So, but yeah, so, they had Savannah, or they took Savannah from me, and obviously everything was such a rush, but had I known that I could have had someone take a picture, for me when they took her out, so I could have seen that, since I was all the way out, I wasn't even, they put me all the way out. So when I came to, I felt a lot of tugging, like there was tug of war going on down there, and they were telling me to look over to my left. The neonatologist, she said, Miss Latimer, I have your baby and I'm going to take her down to the NICU. Can you look over? And I looked over and I just saw this, I didn't even see her body. I just saw like this pink bonnet thing on her head, the little knitted thing. And that's it. Cause like, it was bigger than her body anyway. Cause her head was the biggest thing on her body in the first place. So
what was her weight and her like length?
She was 1 pound, 3.9 ounces, and she was 11.5 inches long.
Wow. That's actually kind of long for only being.
Yeah, she still is long, actually. Her torso is super long. Like, she's going to be tall. She's almost as tall as Azariah now, and he's going to be 9. Wow. So she's going to be tall. Her dad is 6'2", and her other brother is 6'6", so there's some height on her father's side. So definitely she may be an Amazon.
Awesome.
Team Amazon. So, but yeah, so I was like, yeah, she might be, it could be in her favor, obviously, because a lot of models, they want them to be at least like 5'10", I think.
And she is so beautiful.
Yeah, so I think it might not be a good thing for Isaiah, because he doesn't want anybody to be taller than him. I'm like, well, that ship is going to have sailed, buddy.
Yes, it will.
So I know, poor thing. He thinks he's like, well, they're going to be taller than me. I know. And I said, well, what if she's taller than both you and Azariah? There's nothing y'all can do about it. So after they took me to the recovery, and I remember them asking me about like, did I need more drugs? And I'm like, yeah. Whatever the morphine was or whatever painkiller they were giving me, I was like, this isn't enough. I'm starting to feel pain.
Well, yeah, because that stitch hurts like hell. Yeah.
It was
very painful, because it's also, they have to cut through muscle.
Right.
And when you cut through muscle on your, in that area, just sitting up, like anything you do, you're using those muscles in your core.
Right. And you don't realize it, like cough, sneeze, all of that.
Yep. Laughing.
So yeah, that was bad. All of that was, all the things that you take for granted, like you just do because, there's nothing to stop you or nothing, you don't feel any pain from it. But they took me to recovery. Then they brought me to my room and they said I could go see Savannah if I was able to stand up. And for whatever reason, I thought at like 4 o'clock in the morning was a good idea, that I was like, I want to see my baby and I can stand up. But I hadn't been on my feet for over a week.
Oh my
So that was a
gosh.
bad idea.
Now, did your muscles go through any atrophy? Had they started to go
No,
through
because
atrophy
they
or
gave
anything?
me these, they put these blood pressure cuffs on my legs. So it
Oh,
was just
okay.
like me not using them, but the circulation, everything was fine because they had those cuffs on my legs. It just, I hadn't bared any weight on them. So definitely wasn't prepared to stand on my own. I couldn't even walk to the bathroom. Like I needed an escort to go to the for them to walk me to the bathroom. And they're like, yeah, you're not going anywhere. You need to go back to sleep, because they had to like call in some other nurses because I was really adamant that I was going to be able to do it, and I was not. So they had to bring me back in the bed, and then I slept some more. And then I think about like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning was when I was like, y'all have to take me to the baby like now. Cause I didn't even get to see her face, you know?
Well, yeah, because your mother instincts are kicking in,
Right.
and you're like, "Where is my freaking baby?" Like,
and they're like, "Oh, you gotta wait." You know, and literally, I had some flashbacks of like those Lifetime movies where you wake up, you don't have your baby, and someone's taking it. You know what I mean? Like, I know that it doesn't happen as much now, but it has happened a lot
of course it
in real
has.
life,
Well,
where
yeah,
people
and
like just
it's just the fear. You just needed to see
yeah,
her and hold her, or well, I know you couldn't hold her, but
yeah,
just at
that
least
was the
see
other
her.
awful thing. Yeah, so I did they brought me down. And the doctor was talking to me, giving me like, you know, her stats and stuff, which totally was over my head because I was like, I don't understand any of these things that you're telling me because I'm not used to having a baby that's half baked. Because they're like, oh, she looks great for a 23-weeker, and I'm like, she looks like jelly, an alien baby. Like she was pink.
Oh my gosh.
Her hands and everything looked like jelly. It looked like an alien, like that's how she looked.
Well, I mean,
And I
newborn
was
babies
like,
in general,
she
they
was.
don't look cute till they're like a week or so old. They all kind of look,
But she
yeah,
wasn't even that. Like she just
right.
was, her eyes were fused. She looked like a bird, like when they don't have any fur or anything on them when they're first born. Like she just didn't have anything, and
She's
they
going to
were.
listen to this when she's older. She's going to be like, Mom, did you really say that about me when I was?
She did, and they were, but the thing is like, it was a contrast, right? They were like telling me how great she was doing and explaining to me that this was going to be a honeymoon phase where she seemed like she was going to be doing great breathing on her own, but she's probably going to go backwards and they're going to have to put her on the conventional vent, which was going to obviously damage her lungs because the vent was going to expand in her lungs without her doing it. So that's obviously damaging because they weren't even developed. So obviously the machine was making it do something that it wasn't even, they weren't ready to do because the lungs don't even develop until the last trimester of pregnancy. So they were telling me how great she was doing. I'm like, she didn't look great. And I don't look great. I don't even know what it means to say she looks good for a 23-weeker. I've never seen a 23-weeker before. So I just know she's not all the way baked. That's all I know. Like, I was like, what color is she? She doesn't even have is she my baby? Like, I don't even know she's my baby because she's pink, So anyway, that was that and there. And, the hardest thing that for me was when they sat me down and explained to me, Miss Latimer, this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. She's going to have some good days where she's doing really well. She's going to have some bad days where she goes backwards, and we're going to have to, there's going to be a lot of back and forth, but you're going to have to make some decisions. It's going to be risk over benefit type of decisions that we as doctors, as well as you are going to have to make. And, but we're here for you. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is like, because she wasn't due until September. So they were telling me that she wouldn't come home until like around her due date. And she was born in May. So like there's some months there that, that obviously she had to develop because I watched her, eyes open. They opened one at a time, which was eerie to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
To have one eye open and then the other one open the other day. There's 2 days between when your eyes open. Like I literally watched her develop outside of my womb, which was really, really neat, even though it had its, the scariness and everything, the stress and all that came with it. But I had never seen that before. So it was definitely an experience, watching her go through all the things. She had to have 16 blood transfusions. She was pricked every 4 hours for her blood gases and her sugar. And, she was intubated for 6 weeks before they extubated her, but she was always on some sort of oxygen support. She had to have laser eye surgery. She was septic at one point.
And she's had a lot of surgeries too.
Yeah, she's had the laser eye surgery, and she had the surgery in October of 2019. My gosh, I'm forgetting that we're in 2021 now. So October of 2019, she had surgery to take out her adenoids and her tonsils and to put in ear tubes because she was having a lot of reoccurring ear infections. So they put those in there. Yeah. But to see her go through all of that, and they were poking, prodding her, and if, they needed to get a vein or need to draw blood, and then because they're so little, the veins don't stay. So they may get an IV in, and then the next day they won't be able to keep, so they have to go find another place. And sometimes they had to find on the forehead or wherever they could find a vein, which was hard to watch. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So it was hard to watch. I didn't get to hold her until she was 29 days old. And even then she was very sickly when I was holding her. She had IVs in both her hands at the time.
Mm.
And then they were telling me that because she had been extubated where they took the breathing tube out, but then they had to put it back in because she failed like the first round of trying to get her off of the conventional vent. And they re-intubated her, and they were like, "Oh, you want to hear her cry?" Because I'd never heard her cry. And they took the tube out and she didn't cry. And I just lost it because I thought that the tube, which it could have possibly done, damaged her vocal cords because it could do that. So the Dr. Baker, God bless him, he's like, "I'm going to tell you the worst case scenario. Her vocal cords could have been damaged. But I honestly think that it is just that her airway is swollen, and then there's no air being able to pass through. You need air to be able to make a sound, and she's swollen. So there's no air being able to pass through." So he was just trying to give me both sides of the spectrum, and we were praying for the best, but preparing for the worst. And they gave her a steroid that helps inflammation to go down. And a couple days later, when the inflammation went down, then I could hear her voice. It was really, really weak, but I could hear her cry. And it was like the best sound.
Oh,
yeah, it was like the best sound because it had been so long. Like I didn't even hear, So, but yeah, so she spent 120 days in the NICU. She came home 3 days after her due date. So she did really well for her gestation, being born at 23 weeks. She came home, but she did come home on oxygen. And I weaned her off so she came home September 13th of 2017, and I weaned her off of the oxygen completely in December. I think it was December 21st is when she was completely weaned off. So she was only on it for about 3 months, and it was only on it because oxygen is a form of medicine, and she had been on it so long, her body felt that it needed it, but it really didn't. She just had been used to having it, and she relied on it. So that's what we had to wean her off.
So how long was she in the hospital in total from the time she was born?
120 days.
120 days. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
How are you managing your life? Because you had two other kids at home.
Yep.
And you're a single mother. How are you managing that?
So how it started was once I came home, which was a hard time leaving her in the hospital, and because I had to, I couldn't stay. They had to discharge me. So my routine was that I would get up, I would get the boys off to school, and thank goodness school was only another 3 weeks because she was born in May. So school was only another month or so. So I would get the boys off to school, and then I would go to the hospital, and then I would, Azariah didn't need to be picked up from his aftercare until 6:30, so I would stay
And Isaiah was a teenager, so he
was a teen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to really worry about him, but it was more like Azariah getting him from aftercare. So I would pick him up from aftercare, go home, make dinner, and then get ready to go back to the hospital, tell Isaiah to, make sure he gets in bed by 8:30 because I needed to be back at the hospital by 9 for her 9 o'clock cares because she would have her cares every 4 hours.
And here you are driving all the way to Fairfax Hospital, 45 minutes one way.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. And I really wasn't supposed to have been driving because my body you're not supposed to drive for like 2 weeks after you have a C-section. I wasn't taking any pain medicine because I needed to be coherent to drive. So I was only taking ibuprofen, and I just put that little binder thing on where I wrapped it really tight so I could, my insides felt like they weren't going to fall out, and
oh gosh,
drove to the hospital. And the nurses were like, "You just freaking had a baby 3 days ago." And I know, but I have to be here. So that was hard until school was over. Azariah graduated from preschool, so I made it to his graduation. As soon as his graduation was over, I went back to the hospital, and then the summer hit. So then I was like relieved because, school was out, and then I didn't have to worry about trying to make sure everybody was at school and all of that. So thank God it wasn't like in the beginning of the school year where, it was towards the end. So it wasn't like I had to do that much. And Azariah was in preschool, so it wasn't like he was actually in kindergarten or anything. It was Isaiah that was in school, and he was a teenager, so it was a little different. Yeah, it was hard. And then I went back to work 3 weeks before she came home. And I didn't tell anybody at my job when I was working because I didn't want anybody to feel sorry for me. So I just did my job. And then when they told me that she was going to, because they only give you like a 2 to 3 day like heads up as when they're going to get ready to discharge, because there's like a process that the baby has to go through. They have to pass a car seat test. They have to not have any Brady's or tachycardias where their heart rate drops below 60 in order for them to go home. It's a 5-day thing. And if one of those events happens, then the 5 days starts all over again. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So they told me like, okay, we're going to discharge her. And that's when I told my boss, I was like, hey, so I have to tell you something. And he's like, are you free? I was like, I need you to sit down. Like, okay. I was like, well, so I had baby in the NICU. He's like, Yolanda, there's no way you have a baby in the NICU. There's no way. And I was like, yeah. So I need to be home for a while because I need to find a nanny because she couldn't go into regular daycare. So I had to find a nanny that would come to my house and take care of her because she was on oxygen, and I needed someone that knew how to work that. And it was only, such a awesome thing that happened was that one of her primary nurses, she was leaving the state and her nanny was available. So she ended up taking care of Savannah. So I didn't even really need to, I didn't need to do too much, like I thought I was stressed out about that, but then I didn't have to do that because that was a shoe-in, because obviously you take care of a NICU mom's babies. I'm pretty sure you know what you're doing. So
wow, what a godsend.
Yes. So I didn't have to worry about that. And so I was only out of work for we were working from home for a week. And then I went back to work and would come home to her and check in during the day. I would get pictures and stuff about her during the day. She was really, really good with Savannah. So yeah, that was, and I camped out in the living room. I didn't sleep in my bed at all for the first at least 5 or 6 months till she came home from the hospital because it was just so overwhelming. And she had so many appointments and she had physical therapy and these specialists that she had to attend because she had the eye surgery. So I had to make sure she went to her appointments and they were every 2 weeks. And it was just a lot of appointments, a lot of keeping track of her specialist and her development and having to report, write down. And oh my goodness, it was a lot. So.
And now how old is she now?
She is 3 years old now.
And she's thriving and she's healthy and she beat all the odds.
Yes. Yep. She's all caught up with her development. She graduated from speech right before COVID. We all had to be put in shelter in place. She graduated the week before, literally. She's been a complete, everything they said that was going to happen did not. And thank God, but it definitely wasn't an easy road. I'll tell you that. So
it wasn't an easy
it wasn't
road,
what
but
they
she
said,
is, you know,
but it definitely wasn't easy.
Right. I mean, I say I have a miracle baby simply because I was told I would never have a baby without medical assistance. And I did. And he's my miracle. But Savannah is the epitome of a miracle baby.
She is.
I mean, talk about that fighting spirit. Wow.
Yeah, she does. And Diva, they dubbed her Diva of the Garden because she was really, she was very sassy, very in the NICU. So we should have, we all knew that it was going to like carry on because she was very like, she kept those nurses on their P's and Q's, and they were joking with me because once a great milestone as a NICU mom is when you are able to put clothes on them because they're naked for most of the time. So, well, not naked, but they have their diaper on, but no other clothes. So once they tell you, hey, we're ready for them to wear clothes, you're excited. Like you go out and find out all these preemie clothes and you have to bring them in, you have to put them in a bag. And what I would do was label the outfits I wanted her in every day. And her nurses they thought that it was like, that they were scared. So like one day I came in and the outfit that I had for her, they had to change her because she had a blowout and it like messed up the outfit. So they're like, Ms. Latimer, so before you come in, she's got a different outfit on. I'm like, are you guys there? Like, it's not that big of a deal. But they were like, she's got a different outfit on. We're sorry.
they're scared of you. They're like,
I know. Like, it's okay. They're like, we know you put it out. Because I literally label Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And her bows, because I would put bows on the outside of her breathing apparatus and stuff.
Aww.
So it was and they knew that. So they were like, she doesn't have on what you put out. But she did have it on. Just she doesn't have it on right now. But yeah, that was neat that when she was able to wear clothes. But
oh my gosh.
Now Miss Thing, she says and does everything she wants. She knows her name, her full name. She knows to say her full name and her numbers, her colors, just everything. I mean, it's just amazing every day, the things that she absorbs in her head, the things that she recognizes. I mean, so Paris is a theme in my room, and I have Eiffel Towers everywhere around in my room. It's in the clock. I have a stand over there. It's all over. It's everywhere. It's in my bathroom. It's everywhere. So I did not tell her. I did not teach her about Paris at all. And one night, because I have a painting right above my bed, and it has the Eiffel Tower on it. And she's like, "Mommy, tower." And at first I didn't understand what she was saying. I thought she was saying towel. And I was like, there's no towel, Savannah. And she's like, no, tower. I'm like, oh my God, somebody must have told her that was an Eiffel Tower. It wasn't me. I know it wasn't me. So I'm like, who told her that was Eiffel Tower? Because it certainly wasn't me. I'm pretty sure I would remember if I told her that.
All right. Well, like I said at the beginning of the episode, we split this interview into 2 parts. So the second part of the interview will be released next Friday. All of my episodes are released on Fridays because I want to set the tone so that you have good vibes going into the weekend. So if you want to check out Londa on Facebook and Instagram, just look up Londa's Laboratory. Her website is londaslaboratory.com. My website is sandeescarlotta.com, and my book, Happiness Solved: Climbing 100 Steps, is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And thank you again for listening. And I hope that you and your family stay safe and healthy and that your life is filled with peace, joy, and happiness. Until next time, take care.